All of that leads us to schools that need to be understanding-driven and project-based. And by the way, project-based learning is one of those terms that gets profoundly overused. It's one of those edu-speak terms. Get a room full of 100 teachers and say, how many of you do project-based learning? Chances are 80 or 90 of them are going to raise their hands, and the other 10 are going to be really grumpy. But I have a litmus test question for project-based learning. When you say you do project-based learning, my first question for you is this. At the end of a unit, when you really want to know what the kids have learned, what is your assessment tool? If the answer is I give a test, you're not doing project-based learning. You're doing test-based learning with projects along the way to distract the children. And that's fine, but let's call it what it is. Here's another litmus test question. If you say you do project-based learning, and what you assign and what you receive after you have assigned the project is 30 copies of the exact same project, you didn't do project-based learning, you did recipe-based learning. You didn't give a project, you gave a recipe. Project-based learning, inquiry-driven, project-based learning is when the kids' interests, the kids' passions, the kids' ideas are manifest and made real in the artifacts they create. That is project-based learning, and that's what we need. So this is the traditional classroom. It's recall-based, and I really do believe that in the age of Google, it is just about obsolete. What it looks like is, again, projects play a role. Most teachers still give them. But the hierarchy at the end is test-driven. This is the classrooms we need. The work of the children's own head, heart, and hands is the most important work they do. And tests and quizzes play a role, by the way. You know, if you want to have the kids go out and do an architecture project in a geometry classroom, you might want to give them a couple of quizzes to make sure they have enough understanding to actually, you know, design something first. You know, there's nothing wrong with dipsticking for skill development every now and then. But at the end of the day, what you want is for them to apply those things and transfer those things and make real the deep ideas and the big understandings they have taught. Because most of us don't remember what year the Magna Carta was signed. But you better understand that there has been a progression across time, across history, across people, across the world to move towards democracy. How do you get there, right? Because the knock on all these schools, and if you go back to the 1970s and 80s, when architects and progressive educators got together the last time and designed the open classroom, whoops, turns out we were missing a few things. Oops. Project-based, this kind of teaching, this kind of design, this requires the adults actually to have more discipline than the children. And I don't mean discipline in the sort of jackets and ties and demerits and stuff. I'm talking about intellectual discipline. One of the ways that it works at SLA, and what I think happens in so many schools, traditional, progressive, it doesn't matter, is kids get lost in language. If I go to your classroom, and then I go to your classroom, and then I go to your classroom, and what you mean by test or quiz or project or learning or inquiry or subject or whatever is different, I get lost. And the kids who succeed in school are often the ones who figure out the game, who figure out the hidden school. We need to make the hidden school transparent. We need to lay bare the rules of the game. And the way that we do that is designing a common language of teaching and learning. At SLA, what does that look like? Common inputs. Every unit the teachers design, everything that we do, is built around 5 core values: inquiry, research, collaboration, presentation, and reflection. Common process. We all use understanding by design as our curriculum design tool. Every single one of us. So that kids hear the same language of learning no matter where they go. So it doesn't matter if you're in an art classroom or a math classroom, learning sounds the same, feels the same, looks the same. You don't get lost. Common tools, this is our rubric, so that every single project a child does at SLA is graded on this rubric. It's a construct. Grading is a construct. When did we decide that 60% of learning meant that you had learned enough? And that 59% means that you failed? Really? So every project designed on is graded on the design of the project, the knowledge displayed, the application of the project, the process you followed in the presentation of the project. Common language of assessment. And then we work together as a faculty to make sure that our language is similar and to make sure that the ways that we implement this make sense and to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction. And you hear it in the language of children. And then I think the technology needs to be like oxygen. Ubiquitous, necessary, and invisible. It's got to be everywhere. It has to be part of what you do, and then we have to stop talking about it quite so much. None of you who have your laptops or your iPads or your iPhones out would argue that you're doing a technology project right now. And yet that's what we do in schools so often, right? We're not doing, it's like, okay, children, let's go to the lab. Or better yet, I got the laptop cart signed out this week. Let's get all the technology in now. When was the last time we took a child to a pencil lab? Ubiquitous, necessary, and invisible means that it is part and parcel of what we do. Those of you taking notes on using pen and paper, good for you. You're using the tool you want. Those of you on your iPads, good for you. You're on the tool you want. Those of you on your iPads or your iPad 2s, I'm incredibly jealous. I was in Zach's classroom not too long ago, and we had he was doing presentations, and we had a visitor that I was walking around the school with. And one of the kids got up and did a Prezi. Are you going to tell this story? Should I not tell this story? Okay, good. Am I stepping on your lines? And there's a cool Prezi. Awesome, great. The presentation ended, and the visitor who was there leaned over to Zach and said, "Oh, when did you teach the kids Prezi?" And Zach said, "Oh, I don't know Prezi." And the visitor said, "Well, how did the children learn it?" Zach said, "I think they just wanted to." He said, "I showed it to them. Someone had one, we saw it somewhere, and we figured the kids who needed it used it." When we stop making it so prescriptive, when we let kids use the tools in authentic, powerful ways, and guide them and mentor them and help them, it's amazing what they can do. And what this gets to is Neil Postman's idea, that certain technologies are not additive, but transformative. Christian mentioned this earlier. We should not have the schools we have always had, plus some computers. We should have whole new schools. They should allow us to blow out our walls. We still have traditional classroom time at SLA. You still have math class, you still have English class. They're longer, they meet fewer times a week, da-da-da-da-da-da. We do sort of a modified block schedule. We honor that kind of work. But by having this, what we're able to say in our classrooms all the time is there has to be a reason for the coming together. I view our classroom time as communion. It is the coming together. What does it mean that we are together in this space? What is different about it? And that's what needs to happen. And Gutenberg, by the way, Postman uses Gutenberg as the example of this. Right? He says that when you had the invention of the printing press, you didn't have the Europe you always had plus books. You had a truly transformed Europe. The invention of the printing press completely transformed Europe. I would argue the invention of the internet and the proliferation of the internet completely transformed major pieces of the puzzle of the American experience, of the worldwide experience. It's time to let it change schools too. And what technology transforms, and again, and I use this word very, very carefully, is it transforms creation and research and collaboration and presentation and networking. And the reason I say transforms is because schools have done this. But now we can do it differently, and hopefully better, and more powerfully. And to what end, right? Has anybody ever asked that? All of this focus on we've got to raise the scores and do this and do that, and we've got to get, to what end? So we can be globally competitive in a marketplace against it. I want 4 things for our kids. I want them to be thoughtful, wise, passionate, and kind. When I say thoughtful, I don't mean that as a synonym for nice. I mean I want them to be full of thought. I want them to have the wisdom to apply those thoughts in a meaningful way. I want them to figure out which of those thoughts they are, bless you, most passionate about. And I want them to pursue those passions, and then I want them to be kind. If they get that from us, if they learn that with us, I really believe the rest will take care of itself. I think they're going to be okay.